All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 146. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. I enjoyed this weekend. If you listen to this and have listened for a while, you probably know I am a massive Taylor Swift fan. New album came out on Thursday midnight, Friday morning. I don't know which you call it, Thursday or Friday. But it came out and I have been all consumed by it this weekend. I'm actually wearing some lovely merch for the album, Tortured Poets Department, right here, right now. So hope, if you haven't given it a listen, highly recommend. Great album to get into the Taylor Swift world, because she has entered our football world this year. So you might as well also enter her world, especially considering, I mean, she is with a man from Cleveland, Ohio. So you have to support and represent the city by listening to the album. But that has been really fun this weekend. Lots to get into today I want to just briefly touch on kind of the Cavs playoff series thus far, and how that is going. And then we have to get into the second half of the mock draft that I started last episode. So last episode we did picks 1 through 16. Today I'm going to do 17 through 32, just kind of based on the picks I made in those first 16, what is left on the board, and just kind of making my selections from there. So plenty to discuss. Let's first get into the Cavs stuff. So Cavs are up 2-0 on the Magic in their series right now. It's kind of funny looking at just this year compared to last year, and just the general vibe and energy around this team. During the regular season last year, energy was so high. It was like, is this team a contender? Like, how far can they really go? And then they obviously lose in pretty poor fashion in the first round to the Knicks, 4-1. Like, they really had no shot in that series, and were just pretty much dominated the entire time, compared to this season where, you know, they've had good stretches. I don't want to discount the good stretches that they had during the regular season, but once again, riddled with injuries where the starting lineup barely had a chance to actually play together for any extended period of time this season. And beyond that, just some really poor stretches of play where it felt like, gosh, does this team have what it takes to even get past the first round again? Are they going to go back to the drawing board? Is Donovan Mitchell going to be leaving? Are they firing JB Bickerstaff? Which, I mean, that could still happen regardless of how this series goes. But just, I think, so many questions, and now they're up 2-0, you know, hopefully looking to sweep in the first round in this series. And I think it just goes to show how much matchups and luck sometimes matter too. One, I think this is a really good matchup for this team, compared to what the Knicks did with them last year. And, you know, two, I think luck is a big part of it. In game 2, Suggs, you know, went out, and he is probably, if not the most talented player, one of the top most talented players on their roster. So, you know, sometimes things just go in your favor of the available players on the court at that time. And, you know, this team actually happens to be somewhat healthy right now. I know a couple guys are still dealing with some things. The Cavs also announced Dean Wade is going to be out for the rest of the series against the Magic, which, you know, it's a loss, but it's not a massive loss like using one of your core starting players. So, you know, they're hitting this point of the season, I would say, in a decent spot compared to the state of a couple of other teams in the playoffs, where you're seeing injuries really affect what they can do. You know, I think one of the, I guess, two of the big takeaways I would say I have from this series, one being Jarrett Allen, just night and day from last season, on what he did against the Knicks. Obviously, the lights were too bright comment has kind of stayed with him since he made that after that series, and it just felt like he was physically overmatched last season. You know, Mitchell Robinson kind of dominated him. It felt like he never had any momentum there, compared to this series where in these 2 games he has 18 and 20 rebounds respectively, just completely dominating on the boards, and just happy to see him having some good games in general, and hope we can see that continue. I think the other factor, honestly, has been the intensity that the team has been playing with. I went to game one, and, you know, Rocket Mortgage, honestly, it has to be one of the best NBA environments in general. The crowd is really knowledgeable. They are very pumped up. And from, you know, the minute the game started, it felt like the intensity was turned up a notch from the first basket made. Like, it almost felt like leading up to the game, everyone was kind of like, all right, here we go. Don't really know how this is going to go. And then when the team came out with that level of intensity, the crowd was really able to match it. And they went on, you know, a great run to start the game. And, you know, it felt like different guys throughout the game were kind of being that vocal leader or just trying to get the team pumped up in different ways. You had George Niang kind of bickering with everyone throughout, which, not surprising, that's kind of the guy that he is. But he was going at people for sure. You had Isaac going at people. It just felt like they had a bit of a chip on their shoulder, which I think they needed. You can't just be this group of nice guys and expect to play with that level of intensity. I think you have to have somewhat of a chip on your shoulder and, you know, just really feel like you want to go at the guys on the other team, and you could definitely feel that. So very fun to watch, you know, hoping they can close it out, like I said, you know, on the road here with the next two games. And it looks like most likely next they're probably going to play Boston. I just checked, you know, while I'm recording here, Boston and the Heat are playing right now, and it was like a 1-point game when I checked, I think 63-62. So I have no idea where that game is going to land, but Boston is up 1-0. It does seem like they're probably going to play Boston if I were to guess. So, you know, I would say as a team, they always play Boston decently, and just in terms of matchup. Like, I know Boston is far and away the best team in the East, but I don't think it is the worst matchup of all time for the Cavs. And, you know, you catch them on a good day, I don't know, we'll see, but obviously need to get out of this series. I don't want to jinx anything, but feel pretty good about what I've seen from them so far, and just would be nice to get out of the first round this year. Okay, so let's get into picks 17 through 32. The draft starts tomorrow, so we will know very soon. If you are listening to this later, you might already know whether these picks happened or not, and if I was right. But we'll kind of walk through this and just see where it lies. Okay, so pick 17, kicking things off here, we have the Jags, who is an opponent of the Browns this season. I think I mentioned this last episode, but real potential, I think, for the London game, which would be really exciting. But I think the Jags have a couple of different needs right now. Receiver and corner, I would say, are their biggest two, but receiver is a big one after Calvin Ridley decided to head over to Tennessee and sign with the Titans. So I have them taking wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU with this pick. You know, I don't think they have anyone on their current roster with a similar size and speed to him. And I think, you know, with Ridley gone, they definitely need a legit deep threat. Like, Ridley was that guy for them, and that is missing at this point. So, you know, the Jags are a team that just completely collapsed towards the end of last season. It was like pulling teeth watching them play those last couple of games and try to make the playoffs, which they ended up not making because they completely blew it after being first in the AFC at one point in time. So, you know, I think getting another weapon for Trevor Lawrence here is very crucial if they want to be able to bounce back in any way after, like I said, kind of falling apart last season. Okay, pick 18 is within the division here. So we've got the Bengals. I could see them potentially going defensive line, considering their defense really had a massive decline last season. I don't know if that's really been talked about as much as it should, because the focus was so much on Joe Burrow, obviously, and his injury, that it wasn't as talked about of what was kind of happening to the Bengals defense, specifically the run defense, and how poor it was compared to the previous season. But I do still think offensive line is a need for them as well. They've been kind of plugging some vets in, but really I think need to focus on protecting Burrow. That will continue to be a focus for them, especially as his injury issues continue. That's going to be something they need to highlight. So I have them taking offensive tackle J.C. Latham from Alabama here. I think this would be a huge get for him, or for this team, considering many mock drafts out there have him mocked in the top 15. So being able to get him at 18, if he drops, would be a huge deal. And I think they would definitely take him here, but there's also a massive chance he's already off the board at this point. So could be a couple different directions, I think, for the Bengals. Okay, so pick 19 is the Rams. Look, so the Rams were obviously a team that overperformed in 2023. They were unexpectedly a really good roster, even after being, a young team, a team that kind of didn't feel like it had an identity in a way. They definitely overperformed. So I think that's something they're definitely going to want to build on. But another big factor for them is Aaron Donald and his decision to retire. So that is obviously a glaring hole that they have in their roster now. So I do have them taking defensive end Laiatu Latu. I always struggle to say his name with his first and last name being very similar, but Laiatu Latu is who I have him taking here. UCLA, so he would be able to stay in the same city, which I always think is like an underrated factor of these guys getting comfortable in the league, is like being somewhere that they're comfortable living in and working in. So I think that is, I think that's a big factor there, and will obviously help a need that they very much have at the position now, losing Aaron Donald, a generational talent, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, at his position of all time. I think he's someone who's revolutionized the game in a ton of ways. That's going to be a big loss for them. So I think they'll be looking to fill that and develop talent on the defensive line specifically immediately. Okay, then we have another in the Browns division team. We've got the Steelers up here. Center is a definite need on their roster right now. So, there's one particular center I think that most people have mocked to the Steelers at, some point in time, and that is center Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. I think the pick makes a lot of sense for him. I think he has the potential to be a long-term starter and someone that could be a staple on their line, for many years to come. I also think this is probably a useful move for them, considering the offseason moves they made in acquiring Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. You bring in that quarterback talent, you're going to want to try to set them up for success on offense. And, I think center is an underrated position that is really important to the full offense's success. So that is who I have them taking there. Okay, pick 21, Miami Dolphins. I have them taking offensive tackle Amarius Mims here from Georgia. So I think they are another team, I guess, that could also go in a number of ways with this pick. I think there's, most teams have a couple of needs. Some it's like one glaring obvious need, but there's a few teams that maybe don't have that one glaring need and just a couple of needs in general. So I think this pick, I would say be a replacement for Teron Armstead, who a lot of people think this is probably the last year of his career. I think they would be looking to fill that position either this year or next year, based on him moving on. Like you're going to want to draft talent at the position. I think the concern with making this pick this year is that they play the same position. So it's like, where do you put Mims for the time being while Armstead is still in the league and is still playing that position? Do you move him to guard for a year? Are you concerned about moving him to guard for a year and disrupting maybe what he is doing at his current role? I don't know if, what their concerns would be in that realm, but I do think a lot of teams draft for the future. So I don't think it's a crazy thought to think of them looking down the road and saying this very, very soon is going to be a position that we have needs at, and just kind of working on that right now. So that is who I have the Dolphins taking. Pick 22 is the Eagles. Eagles need a corner. They definitely need a corner. So I have them taking Nate Wiggins from Clemson. He was the fastest defensive player at the Combine. A lot of speed talk this year, which I kind of feel like is every year at the Combine. Like, people get so excited about the fast guys that have really kind of shown off in that way. And he was definitely someone who got a lot of attention at the Combine for that reason. I think this draft is pretty heavy at cornerback. So even though I think the Eagles have other needs, like obviously replacing Jason Kelce, I think this pick makes the most sense given the talent at the position. Sometimes I think you have to draft based on that when you have multiple needs. If there is a lot of talent at a certain position within that year's draft, you kind of might skew towards that direction because the level of talent you're going to be able to get at pick 22 is going to be a lot greater than maybe another position that doesn't have as much talent in that specific year's draft, where you can maybe address that in future drafts or free agency or wherever else. So that is what I have the Eagles doing. Minnesota Vikings up next. So they got this pick from, actually, it was originally Browns through Texans, which obviously this is the last of the Deshaun Watson draft picks that ended up getting sent over to the Vikings. So I don't actually think that the Vikings are keeping this pick. There's a lot of talk about what the Vikings are going to do with their 2 first-round picks. They have pick 11 and then they have pick 23 here. I obviously did not have them taking a quarterback with their first pick, but a lot of teams think that, or a lot of analysts and people talking about the game think that they're going to take those 2 picks, combine them to trade up even higher and take a quarterback. But I actually have them taking a quarterback here at 23 just for the sake of no trades, not moving these picks around. I have them taking JJ McCarthy, which I believe is actually maybe who they want anyways, obviously from Michigan. I think JJ would be lucky to land here, just given all of the landing spots for quarterback needy teams. I think this is one that he could have a lot of success in and would be a little bit better to play in from day one. So I think this would be a nice spot for him. I think all options really though are on the table for what the Vikings are going to do on this day. I think they could be a same day trade type candidate for sure. But in terms of JJ McCarthy, look, like, I'm obviously going to be biased as an Ohio State fan. Like, I think JJ has been the quarterback of this draft cycle that has been hyped up way too much. People sometimes mocking him, even up there with the top 3 quarterbacks in this year's draft, which I just think is a little bit crazy. And he, around the time of the Combine, I feel like was talked about a lot by a ton of reporters, and it felt like someone was putting all of this information out here about JJ and trying to hype him up too much, or teams were honestly trying to use it as a ploy in different ways. You never really know where that information is all coming from, but I do think he's gotten a little too much hype and might be a little bit more of a wild card than people wanted to make him seem. I think people act like he's somehow like a safe choice, but I don't really get that just based on the college offense that he played in, where he didn't have to do too much in that Michigan offense. I think that makes it more of a concern that you haven't really seen everything and seen him work in different ways that I would be concerned about it translating to the NFL level. So we'll see, but I have the Vikings taking JJ there, and I think the Vikings need to come out of this draft with a quarterback. You cannot walk away with Sam Darnold as your guy into this season and into training camp. Just can't happen. Okay, pick 24 is the Cowboys. I have them taking running back Jonathan Brooks here from Texas, first running back off the board. They obviously lost Tony Pollard in free agency, so I think running back is a massive need for them. Look, most people actually have Brooks mocked in the second round of this draft, but you know, I think because it's such a need for them, I have them taking him here. You know, I could definitely see him falling to the second round, and honestly, them being able to take him in the second round as well. But people just, I don't think they usually mock running backs in the first round. But I'm being different and unique, so that's what's happening here. Look, he has some injury history, ACL, and I think that's always a concern with a running back. But I do think, you know, that him being the top running back in this draft class for sure, and that being a need, like I said, I think it's, you know, still a good pick to take here late in the first round. Pick 25 is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers actually have a ton of draft picks this year. They have 11 draft picks, which is really crazy to consider. They're another team, I think, similar to the Rams that really overperformed this past year and really exceeded all expectations of what they could do. Jordan Love looked a lot better than I think a lot of people did, which is, of course, what happens for the Packers and just the history of that franchise and quarterbacks. And they were the youngest team in 2023, so pretty wild that they have 11 picks to add to their already extremely young roster. I think they're going to be a popular pick for people to talk about as like this sleeper team. It's going to be them in the NFC, and then Houston in the AFC is like, oh, these are the up-and-coming teams, the young teams that are really going to show out. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually ends up being the case, or if 2023 was just kind of a splash in the pan and it's not going to continue. But I don't even know if I said who they're going to pick yet. I've just been kind of talking about them as a team, but if I didn't say it, they're taking defensive tackle Byron Murphy from Texas. I think it'll help out the Packers' run defense. You know, they have some other roster needs, I would say. But considering the talent of the player, a lot of mocks have him off the board way earlier in this draft. So I think it's one of those things of like best player available on the board. If he's still available, it's still a need on your team. So I think you take him there, you know, if he's available at 25. So that is the Packers. Next up, pick 26, we have the Buccaneers. One of my favorite names in this year's draft is what I have them taking. Corner, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Kool-Aid is one of the greatest names I've ever heard. I think that's awesome. From Alabama. I think the Bucs have a couple of different needs. I think they could go corner. I think they could go edge. I think they could go interior of the offensive line. You know, a couple of main needs, but like I mentioned earlier, a lot of corner talent in this draft class. So I have them taking corner. You know, benefits for taking him are he is polished and NFL ready. He's smart. Always, everything you read about him talks about how smart he is. And great body control, really just a true outside corner that I think could make an impact day one. So I think this would be a good pick for a team that is trying to win their division again. You know, they're in one of the weaker, if not the weakest division in the NFL. So definitely, I'm sure they're hoping to continue, especially after winning a playoff game this last season, re-signing Baker Mayfield. I think it makes sense to bring in someone who is NFL ready with their first round draft pick. So that's the direction I have them going. Pick 27, another Arizona Cardinals pick. This pick they got from Houston. Look, they are a team, obviously, as I mentioned when I did the first picks, that they have a lot of draft needs. At pick 4, I had them addressing wide receiver, taking Marvin Harrison Jr., so not having them take a receiver again. I have them taking a defensive tackle, Johnny Newton from Illinois. Very dominant player in college without a ton of talent around him, which I think shows that he was able to shine without other people kind of lifting him up. So I think that bodes well for someone's ability to translate over to the NFL. I think one of the downsides people talk about with him is the fact that he is a bit undersized. So it's not going to be for some teams, but he still has that kind of natural quickness, power, and those attributes that you want. So I have the Cardinals taking him there. Buffalo Bills, fun pick here because obviously the Bills made the choice for finally, after years of speculation, to move on from Stephon Diggs. He is now gone, so wide receiver is definitely a need for this team. I think Bills fans are going to be extremely upset if the Bills do not take a receiver with their first round pick. I think fans are begging them to address this. So I have them taking wide receiver A.D. Mitchell from Texas. He is one of the 2 Texas receivers on the board here that I think they could have gone in the direction of either A.D. Mitchell or Xavier Worthy, but I had them going A.D. Mitchell. He's got huge upside, speed, body control, but I think he still needs some refining. So, it's an interesting spot to take a player, I think, that needs some refining, just considering the Bills hope to continue to be a contender in this league. But I just think that the upside and the high-end talent is there, that you can't pass up on it. The production for him wasn't quite there in college, so I would say there's question marks for that reason. But like I said, all those attributes that you want are there, and the Bills need to take a receiver or the world is going to explode. Pick 29, the Lions pick. I have them taking an edge here. He is from Missouri, Darius Robinson, very versatile player. He's a Detroit native, which I think fits in with their culture. I think the Lions are a team that is very big on culture and bringing in guys that care about the city, care about what they're doing. Like, I think Dan Campbell has set that precedent, and it's been a very, very real thing. And I know some people think that stuff is small, but like I said, Detroit native, he's also like energetic, confident type guy, the type of guy that Dan Campbell really likes to bring in. And I think that matters. And they've made some picks the last few years where people kind of look at it like, that was interesting, kind of a random pick for them, but it's someone who really fits their culture and what they're trying to do. And I think that's worked out for them. Edge isn't like a massive position of need for them, but I think it's always a position you look to stack talent at. And because he's such a fit in these other areas, I think they would make the pick. Okay, pick 30, another division pick. It's funny, all of the AFC North teams are in this back half of the first round because we have the most competitive division in all of the NFL and happen to win a lot of games. So obviously the Browns don't have a first round pick, but if they did, it would be in the back half of this draft. So Baltimore Ravens, I think offensive line is a big need for them to continue working on protecting Lamar. So I have them taking offensive tackle Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. Lot of talent and potential, even though he didn't have a lot of college experience. He only played he only had 14 starts in his 4 years. So not a ton of like actual production in college to look at, but potential is definitely there because he's a high level athlete that has the physical tools that the Ravens seem to like to bring in on their team. They're consistently a team, I think, that is getting the most out of guys and bringing the best out of players that sometimes might be a bit of a project. So I think this is a good pick for them there, considering it's a need for them as well. Pick 31, almost there. San Francisco 49ers. You get to these teams usually, like with the 49ers, it's kind of like, what do they need? What do the 49ers actually need? But I have them taking an edge here. Chop Robinson from Penn State. I actually don't think he drops this low in the draft. It just kind of worked out this way in this draft. But if the 49ers were able to get him here, I would be extremely jealous. He had really impressive athletic testing at the combine that everyone was obsessing over. Also, very cool name, Chop Robinson. Awesome name. His college production wasn't anything special, 11 and a half sacks in 30 games. But I think people really see the elite moments that he had and focus on those. And kind of, it shows teams what his upside could be. And then on top of that, you put that athletic testing at the combine. People get really excited about a guy like that. So I could see him getting taken higher, but maybe people have some concerns about his production in college and he kind of drops down to here. I think I could see them taking an offensive lineman as well. I think that could be another option, but in this case, I have them taking Chop Robinson. And then the last pick 32, the Kansas City Chiefs. I was just saying, it's like usually you get to this point and you're like, what do these teams need? But I think everyone knows what the Chiefs need, and that is a wide receiver. The Chiefs still need a wide receiver. We will be saying this for the rest of the time that Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, is that the Chiefs need a receiver because they are never really bringing in this top-end receiver talent, just knowing that Patrick finds ways to get it done with a guy who walked off of the street most of the time. But they are very lucky in my mock draft, and who knows if they'll be so lucky on draft day to get wide receiver Xavier Worthy from Texas, the other Texas receiver that I mentioned when talking about the Bills. I think this would be an incredible steal for them at 32 if they're able to get him and, you know, have that much needed receiver help they've been dying for. I could see the Bills honestly taking him at 28 if he is, you know, on the board at that point in time. Like, the Bills very well could be making that pick instead. He's definitely a speed guy. You know, he is a little bit smaller bodied, which I think is the concern that people have with him. But look, the Chiefs have literally nobody who can stretch the field vertically like he can. So I think automatically there he is a different prototype than they've brought into their receiver room in quite a while. I'm not comparing him to Tyreek Hill in any way, but it feels like that's the last time they had a true speedster guy like that. And that's kind of what they're going for here. So, you know, he probably won't turn into Tyreek Hill, but it's always worth a shot. You know, you got to take shots in the draft. That's what it's all about. Everyone gets all, I don't know, on their high horse about knowing exactly what each team needs to do and who they're going to take. And that's a bad pick. That's a good pick. So much of it is guessing. I mean, think about the quarterback draft class a couple of years ago that had Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. The only one of those quarterbacks in that draft, there was Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. The only one that is still starting in his same spot is Trevor Lawrence, and he has had some bad moments. I just talked about the Jags kind of falling apart last year. All the other guys are not, they're not doing what they were supposed to be doing as first round draft picks. So we are all just kind of guessing at the end of the day, but it's fun to speculate. Excited to watch the draft tomorrow. Would be more excited if the Browns actually had a pick. There is, I would say, a 0% chance that they're trading up into the first round. That would be the most unlike Andrew Berry thing that has ever happened if he were to trade up into the first round. It's more likely that he's probably trading down from pick 54 and trying to acquire more assets in the draft, but we will see what happens. Looking forward to it either way. It really just gets you excited about football, makes you feel like the season is close, even though it is still so far away. Because after the draft, we really wait for schedule release, and then beyond that, you're just waiting for training camp. So more to come as the weeks go on here. But thank you guys so much for listening. Very much appreciated. If you could leave a review or rating, I would love that. Comment on the YouTube if you're watching on the YouTube. Subscribe there as well. Hopefully the next time I'm talking to you, the Cavs have won their series and are getting ready to prepare for their next series. We'll see. But if not, we'll be back to talk about everything that happened in the draft and the picks the Browns made, the picks that happened, especially in the first round, that were either shocking or predictable or just all of that good stuff. Very much looking forward to seeing what happens. So thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Browns.